Hey folks, this is Garrett, the registered nurse, or as I like to call myself, Nurse Know-It-All, and I'm here to talk to you today about antidepressants. Antidepressants have been around for a long, long time, and they can go back up in time 25, 30 years, and they were using one thing. Today they're using something else. They call them, today they're SSRIs or SNRIs. Then we go back to the older tricyclic antidepressants. We can go back even further than that and go to MAO inhibitors. These have been used for a long, long time. And then we have the atypical antidepressants and so on. Anxiety is terrible, terrible, terrible to live with. I don't know what your experience is. My experience is it feels like you're having a heart attack, your heart starts racing, you can't think straight, you start sweating all over the place, nausea, it can be vomiting, your hands are cold, palms are sweaty, you start getting goosebumps all over the place, up in your brain, you can't think straight, you start crying perhaps, and that's just anxiety. But those are also some symptoms of depression because some people have both. And depression is a terrible thing to have to live with too. But the problem is antidepressants are used for both anxiety and depression. Same doses. It's unbelievable. Because everything I've read, none of it can be proven. It's impossible. It really is just impossible. It's like hit and miss. And none of these doctors, none of these drug manufacturers, there's nobody out there that really truly understands how these drugs work. I mean, all you got to do is a simple Google search on the drug that you want to know about, and you're going to see on every page, I mean every, and there's no exception to this unless they just didn't print it. But you're not going to hear anything to the contrary that the exact mechanism of action is not fully understood. I see that everywhere I look. I mean, for years and years and years. And I tried to take them because I got terrible anxiety, and my doctor was saying antidepressants are great for anxiety. Well, I wasn't really even depressed at all, but they say anxiety and depression share the same pathway. In other words, if you're anxious, then you're probably a little bit depressed, and vice versa. If you're depressed, you probably have some anxiety. I mean, it would make sense, but it's never been proven. That's all I can tell you on it. I mean, I have definitely felt depression before. There's no question about it. But for the most part, I'm anxious. And because I'm anxious all the time, that would make me depressed. Does that make sense? I hope so, because that's what's really going on. And if you're depressed all the time, it's going to make you anxious. I mean, it just makes sense. But it cannot be proven that they share the same pathway in the brain. A lot of people say share. Okay, well, show me a microscope and show me what this pathway you're talking about look like. Does it have dotted lines down the middle of the pathway like a car driving down the street? Nobody knows. There is no such microscope. So you got to be really, really careful. Now, your SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, there's going to be many of them. That's going to be Lexapro, Celexa. And by the way, they were made by the same company. Celexa, I'm just going to touch on those for a minute because those come to mind. But Celexa came out way, way, way before Lexapro ever did. Made by the same company. But why didn't they come out together? The reason is because of the patent. The patent is generally good. I believe it's 11 years. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's 11 years. When a drug company comes out with a drug, nobody else can make it. There's no generic equivalent. It's like going to Target and picking up a bottle of Tylenol, and right next to it, you see another bottle that says Target brand acetaminophen or Benadryl, and right next to it, you see diphenhydramine, same active ingredient in both medications. Yet people want to go out and spend, it's not that they want to, it's ignorance because people don't know that when you go to the store, I mean, they do it with shampoos. I've seen it with deodorants and toothpaste and all sorts of stuff that are in retail settings. So it's up to you as a consumer to go ahead and do your own due diligence and look this stuff up, because I promise you, I am not lying to you. This is all the truth, and you're spending a lot of money unnecessarily. So back to antidepressants. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibition. What does that mean? Well, every website I've ever gone to and every leaflet from a drug that I've ever read talks about the synapse. The synapse is this little space between, you got one neuron here and you got one neuron here, and this space like between my knuckles here is called the synapse, and supposedly that's where the firing takes place. Again, we don't have a microscope to actually see that going on, so we're talking about mainly just theory, and nobody knows for sure. So what they're saying, normally what I'm reading is, and I do understand this stuff, folks, okay? Now, hopefully you're going to understand it, but normally what they say is, okay, you got low serotonin, so what happens is you got a molecule going from this neuron to this neuron, and when you're low, you don't have enough firing going back and forth between these, and there'll be two more neurons down here and two more over here. I mean, gosh, there's billions of them probably in the brain. I have no idea what the number is. But the theory, it's all working theory. It's hypothesis. Nobody knows for certain. And nobody knows what the established values of serotonin are. In other words, if I go to the emergency room and I'm not feeling well and they check my blood, well, my blood count is supposed to be between 35 and 45. When I used to work in the hospitals, if somebody was like around 29, we'd think about start transfusing them with blood. On the flip side, if they're way above that 45 number, then we'd start, the tubes that they use in phlebotomy when you go to get blood drawn at LabCorp request, and they fill up those tiger top tubes, the real long skinny glass tubes. I've gone out to a patient's home, it's called polycythemia vera, where they make too much blood, which can also cause health consequences. So we need to pull off some of the blood. So what we do is take a needle and stick it in their arm and I filled up 40 of the tubes at one time in a patient's home to take off a lot of blood because their numbers were just too high and we had to get them normal. But when you're dealing with serotonin, we got like a coffee filter in the brain. It's called the blood-brain barrier. Almost think of it like a mesh if you want. And there is no established values like there is with the blood count I was just giving the example of. I can't tell you what's in your brain. We don't stick needles in the head and draw up, because from everything I've read, the numbers up here don't correlate with what's down here in the peripheral blood. So, and even if they did, we still don't know what the established values are, normal values. In other words, my number might be 5 billion and yours may be 2 billion, but neither of us are depressed or have anxiety. So why is that when we got, your low number and my high number? Well, maybe we're talking about the wrong problem, chemical, or maybe we just don't know. I mean, isn't it fair to say in medicine sometimes we just don't know? No, doctors don't do that. Instead, everything's got to be called something. And if they don't know, then they say pseudo, this and that. That means false. There are so many names out there that just don't really even mean anything. It's just a description of what we're seeing. So they want to call it something fancy. And, that's where I come into play, because I know all the terminology out there. So it's kind of like trying to throw a ball at a baseball player. You can't throw a ball at me because I know what I'm talking about. And now you know. So anyway, that's what SSRIs are all about, supposedly. And then we're going to move on to SNRIs, which would be like Effexor, Cymbalta. I think Prestique is one of the newer ones. I'm not that familiar with Prestique, but those are the ones. So now we're messing with selective serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. SNRIs. So now we're messing with your serotonin and your dopamine. I'm sorry, and your norepinephrine. But again, and then there's dopamine, and there's a lot of other chemicals in the brain. Nobody knows for sure that X plus Y equals Z. They just don't know it. It's all conjecture. It's all guess. Okay? And so keep that in mind next time you want to take an antidepressant. Okay? That's number one. Number two is going to be the side effect profile. Oh my God. The side effects. They are amazing. Well, but when you're desperate to get well, you're willing to go through anything because you think on the other side of the storm, the grass is going to be greener, you're going to be doing so much better, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's probably going to be some people watching this video that say, hey, it was rough in the beginning, but yeah, it did help my anxiety or help my depression or whatever. Well, has anybody ever heard of the word placebo? Really, folks, placebo. And there may be something outside of placebo that I'm not aware of, but I'm just not aware of it. So I'm here to tell you the truth, right? You want the truth from me? I'm giving you my truth. And what I understand from reading. When I was a kid, I would never know any of this stuff because the internet was not around. And even encyclopedias didn't contain this type of information, but you can Google search anything today and get any kind of information on anything. And that's what I've done with my life as an adult, even early into my early nursing career. But the side effects, oh my gosh. When you're taking it for anxiety, the side effects initially, for the first couple of weeks, now this is again in the literature, it's been my experience that it's not consistent with the literature. But the literature says they're a little bit stimulating at first. If you're taking it for anxiety, you make it worse anxiety for a little bit, and as things calm down, then your anxiety is going to be better. I don't know. I never experienced that. Depression, same thing. They all say it takes 4 to 6 weeks to work. Why? Why would it take 4 to 6 weeks to work, to build up in your system? Why? How about as it generally builds up? From the first day, you should start feeling better, right? If it's doing what they're saying it's going to do. I just don't buy into it. And I'm telling you my experience, and you got to do your own homework, but I just don't see how anybody can buy into this. But again, back to the side effects. They are terrible. It's more than just increasing your anxiety. You get dry mouth, you get constipation, you get nausea, you get headaches, you get blurred vision. The list goes on and on. I could go from A to Z and give you probably 500 symptoms that not everybody's going to get, but you're going to get a good majority of symptoms. I don't think I've ever known anybody that's taken any kind of antidepressant and said, I didn't get any side effects. I've just never heard that before. So what you do is you go to your doctor, he puts you on an antidepressant, you take it for a month or 2 months, it's not doing anything or it's making you worse, and the doctor says, okay, forget it, this is not working, stop the medicine, and we're going to try something else. So what happens when you stop taking the medicine? Well, then comes the discontinuation syndrome that I talked about in my intro video, and discontinuation equals withdrawal. It's a different kind of withdrawal, I will admit that. It's not the same kind of withdrawal that one would experience, say, coming off of oxycodone or something like that. Or, it's like I'm coming off of Xanax right now, and it's definitely not the same kind of withdrawal. But you start getting these electric shocks in your head and trailing with your vision. So, like, you turn your head, and it's like a tennis ball hit with a racket, and it's just like, jumping across. And it's like lagging behind as you turn your head. It's like, you ever like turn a light switch on and off in the bathroom, and when it's off, you kind of still see yourself, and you can, in the mirror, you can still kind of see yourself, and it's kind of just a weird sensation when you try and move, but you're still seeing that still image. That's kind of what it's like. And I think a lot of you can relate to that example probably. It just came to my head just now. So, but again, there are so many side effects. And then you go back to your primary care physician and he says, well, the Lexapro didn't help, so let's try Zoloft, and so on and so on and so on. And when that stuff doesn't work, there's some doctors out there that want to go back to the older tricyclic antidepressants, such as like amitriptyline or I'm trying to think, tofranil is another one, which is imipramine. That was another one. There's another one called Pamelor. I mean, the list is just so long. How do you think these drug companies stay in business? They got to keep coming up with drugs. Because if you go into Wikipedia and you look up the chemical composition of any one of these drugs, they are all very, very similar. There's some that's got an extra hydrogen group on it. Some of it's got a hydroxyl group on it, which is OH indicated by. And there's just a large array of different chemicals. It's kind of like you take sodium and chloride. Now we got sodium chloride, which is table salt. We got sodium pentothal. There's all sorts of ways. You can always combine two chemicals together and call it, usually they'll have the first and the other name together and call it, you'll be familiar with the name of it, but you can usually break it down into components as to what chemical it is. So that's a little bit on the chemistry. Again, the patents are only good for 11 years. So what happens after the 11th year? I believe it's 11. I'm sorry, it could be 13. I just forget. And but what happens after that 11th year? That drug companies, now the research and development part of that company has got all the people going to work probably somewhere midway, or probably maybe even at the beginning when the drug first comes out, and they're working on it so that they're trying to come up with something similar that they can call it a different name and get you to go to the pharmacy and spend all your money when basically they are all the same. Now that's a little bit different when we're talking about the older tricyclic antidepressants and MAO inhibitors. Chemically, they're not going to be so similar, but the main facts that you're going to read about is that serotonin is the problem. We don't know that, folks. We really just don't know it. It's just assumed. I mean, you could call it anything. You could say your oranges are low. I mean, really, it's just ridiculous what goes in this world of medicine. Everything in our world is driven by money. Money, money, money. Forget about how you feel, right? You can go around feeling terrible. They don't care. They just want your money. And I'm not really here to talk about money. I'm talking about your health. I want you to be well. I want to be well. I think everybody wants to be well. So that's what's going on with the antidepressants. There's some people that treat the depression by taking stimulants, narcotics. I mean, there's like 10 ways to skin a cat, they say, right? Or something like that. So you got to pick and choose which way you want to go about it and which is the safe way to go about it. And always check with your doctor about, other ways to go about it. There's also devices and meditation. I mean, there's so many ways to treat anxiety. Everybody just wants to go through life and pop a pill and be better and then have everything over with. That's not what God intended our bodies to do, to make ourselves better. There are some, for me, coming off the Xanax right now, it's for those of you that don't know, Xanax is probably one of the hardest drugs to come off of that known to man. And of course, I'm on it. It's just my luck. If you watch my intro video, I can add it to my list of problems. When you shave that pill, just a couple granules to try and come down it. That's why people use the water titration to try and get their levels down. Because even if you take a razor blade, you just take a couple crystals off of that pill, and you don't get it just right, you're going to feel withdrawal side effects from that little tiny decrease. That drug is so, so powerful. They say it works on your GABA receptors, which is gamma aminobutyric acid, just the name. It does something, because I know that if I take a Xanax and I'm having anxiety, it works like that. It's unbelievable how quick it works. But the problem is they're short acting, they don't last for long, and then you got to take another, and before long, you're building tolerance. You have to increase your dose, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't do that, you're going to go through a tolerance withdrawal, or some people actually even withdraw between doses. Sorry, I don't mean to go off on a tangent because now I'm talking about Xanax when this video is supposed to be about antidepressants. So people take these drugs. If you do a search on how many Americans around or how many people around the world suffer from anxiety and depression, you're going to come up with astronomical numbers, especially now in this world that we live in with this COVID virus and everything else, and financial issues and everything. The numbers just keep going up as the world keeps going on. I think this is probably along the lines that ultimately we're going to destroy ourselves down the road. But we can't be so interested in money. We got to be interested in health and research and doing what's right for people and not what's right for their pocketbooks. I don't mean to make this video all about pocketbooks because it's really not. But you got ignorance going on over here. It's just everywhere. And so again, I'm here to provide you with the facts as I know them and the truths as I know them. But certainly, I also want to point out the untruths that you've been told by your doctors and by whoever. Now keep in mind, these doctors that are going to medical school today have instructors, and the instructors are saying, this is how you treat depression, or this is how you treat anxiety. So they come out of medical school with very limited knowledge about, they know how to do it, but they don't necessarily know how it works. It's funny, I was talking to a psychiatrist recently. I've actually spoken to many psychiatrists because I wanted to find out, have you ever eaten a Thanksgiving meal and you feel really, really good after the meal? Well, a lot of the literature says that turkey is very high in serotonin. So I guess that's how they jump to serotonin, makes you feel good. Just a molecule. Again, I don't know really how they know this, but there may be some truth to that. I really don't know. I really don't know. But I don't think anybody really knows. So anyway, back to the serotonin thing. From everything I've ever read, what happens is, in order to make molecules of serotonin is a process. And what you have is L-tryptophan. These are amino acids. L-tryptophan, and they used to sell this over the counter, but then they took it off because somebody had a problem with their liver, and they put a black box warning on the label and something like that. I don't know the whole story, but this is the sequence of how you get to serotonin. So you got L-tryptophan, draw an arrow, converts into 5-hydroxytryptophan or 5-HTP. Again, another drug or supplement that you can get at any nutrition store without a prescription. And 5-HTP is then supposed to convert into serotonin. So why you go L-tryptophan, 5-HTP, serotonin. So if we're trying to increase the amount, see, if you take an antidepressant, what they say reuptake inhibition. So that's taking this neuron, and blocking that molecule from this neuron to get inside this one. So what they want to do is start playing ping pong back and forth with each other. So the way I understand it is that you're faking the brain into thinking that there's more when there's not, because you're blocking the transmission from this neuron to this neuron and making it go back and forth and fooling the brain. But when you take a drug like L-tryptophan, and L-tryptophan converts to 5-HTP, and 5-HTP converts to serotonin, why wouldn't you just want to increase your serotonin that way instead of taking a drug that you really don't know anything about and how it works, and you really don't even understand the function of it in the first place? So there's so many unknown variables in this whole equation, but again, important for you to know. Now, L-tryptophan, you can't get that anymore over the market because they took it off the market because of this black box warning. But then L-tryptophan converts to 5-HTP or 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is available over the market, and 5-HTP converts directly into serotonin. So that should be the drug that you're taking, I would think. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just saying that would be the one that would make sense to me. But, you know, it's funny. So I was telling you, over the years, I've talking to several psychiatrists that are prescribing you these SSRIs, the SNRIs, etc. You would think they would know what 5-HTP is, right? If it converts directly into serotonin. I mean, these same doctors know what L-tryptophan is because they come from that older generation when people were given L-tryptophan. 5-HTP is relatively new in our generation, but the doctors don't even know what it is. I challenge each and every one of you. Go to your psychiatrist, your prescribing physician who's giving you these drugs to increase your serotonin, and ask them about 5-HTP. I guarantee you, I've yet to meet a doctor, a psychiatrist, who knows what 5-HTP is. How delinquent is that? They don't know what the drug is, what the supplement is. It's an amino acid that converts directly into this molecule they want you to have, yet they don't know what it is. But they know what L-tryptophan is because L-tryptophan was something they were familiar with when they were younger. It's like my generation knows 5-HTP, where the older generation knows L-tryptophan. But what you really need to know is the 5-HTP converts to the serotonin. It should be that sequence of events that people are looking for. But guess what? No doctor's going to go out and tell you, even if they knew what 5-HTP is, and I guarantee you again, you will not find one doctor that does. But what was I going to say? Oh, the reason even if they knew what it was, they wouldn't tell you to go get it. And you know why? I'm going to tell you why. Okay? Because there's no money in it. You can go buy it for nothing at the nutrition store. But if you go to your pharmacy and you got to fill your prescription, you're going to pay out the yin-yang for that, but not at the nutrition store. No, look, your doctor doesn't want you to be sick. He doesn't want you to not feel well. It's ignorance, folks. They just don't know about it because they weren't taught it. It needs to be added to a medical school program or something. Now, on the flip side, one other thing I want to talk to you about is I've taken 5-HTP and it did not help me. So now we got another variable. Maybe we're talking about the wrong, maybe it's not serotonin. Maybe it's norepinephrine. Maybe it's dopamine. I mean, it could be anything. We just don't know. Have you ever had a doctor say, I don't know, we don't know, medicine doesn't know? No, they don't do that. Instead, they want to say it's pseudo this or hyper hypo this. Hyper meaning high, hypo is low, right? I mean, everything's got a name, but it doesn't have an explanation or a reason as to how it became this way, what it is, how it works. It's guess, guess, guess. You might as well put a question mark next to everything that comes out of their mouth. So anyway, I think I'm going to end here because I don't know what else to tell you about antidepressants. I think I've told you everything. So I went over the withdrawal. I went the dosing. The dosing you got to be very careful with also, because the higher up you go, the harder it is to come down later on. You know, and some doctors will put you on excessive doses that you don't need. They don't know. They got these little pocket guides they pull out of their pocket that says you can prescribe from this to this number, you know, and if they're still having problems, then you can go to this number. And so, you know, before long, you're winding up on a dose that, I don't know. This you guys understand. I'm not trying to sound confusing. It's a confusing topic because they're confused. I'm not confused. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And I hope and I pray that this video helps you, because I am really upset. I'm not going to use vulgar language on here, on this channel or anything, but I am really upset and I'm really disappointed with the whole medical community that they have gone ahead and they have used our health, our negative health, to make a lot of us a lot sicker in many ways. So we got to do our own due diligence, folks. I think I'm going to end here because I'm running out of words. I don't know what to tell you anymore. It's really sad. I just feel bad for all of you going through this because I know you got question marks all above your head. You don't know which way to go. Do you go left? Do you go right? Do you turn around? What do I do? What kind of doctor is going to help me when none of them know what the heck they're talking about? Pocket guides. So anyway, take care, be well, and I'll be back with my next video. I'm not sure what topic it's going to be on. Be sure it's going to be interesting and it's going to contain facts and knowledge. Take care, be well.